Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Henry Little. I'm Chief Executive of Opera Rara. It's fantastic to see so many friendly faces on Zoom, and thank you all for taking the time to join this evening's very exciting Opera Rara season presentation for 23-24. We're going to kick off with a short video. Great. So there you have it, a 4-minute whistle-stop tour of the very many exciting things that we have planned at Opera Rara over the next year or so. And joining me to get into a little bit of more detail about each of those projects, I'm delighted that Roger Parker, our repertoire consultant, is with us. Roger is currently in Chicago, where he's very busy doing a lecture tour of that part of the States, and it's fantastic that he's taken the time to be with us. So Roger, as always, you're very welcome, and thank you very much for joining me to present some of this very exciting work. Let's start with the composer that I guess is the one who's most associated with Opera Rara's work. And that, of course, is Gaetano Donizetti. 2023 is an exciting year. It's actually the 225th anniversary of Donizetti's birth in 1797. And so quite deliberately, we at Opera Rara have decided to make a particular focus, perhaps more than we usually might, on the work of this extraordinarily active and eclectic composer. Donizetti is very much our house composer. We have recorded so far 26 of his operas, and the project which is first, which is coming out a month's time, is actually project number 27, Donizetti's L'esule di Roma, which we are presenting in a brand new edition, overseen of course by Roger, and that will be presented with a all-star cast, including Albina Shaggy-Muratova. Some of you will have seen her in that earlier video. Nicola Alaimo, Sergei Romanovsky. They're our main international stars, but they're also joined by a trio of younger emerging artists, Kija Binek, Luis Calvetti-Pey, and Andre Enriquez. And just as with our earlier recording of Donizetti's Il Paria back in 2019, we will be joined again by Britain Sinfonia, who will be our partner orchestra. But Roger, let me just ask you to tell us a little bit about L'esule, and in particular, why this opera at this time, and what do you think it has to offer to 21st century audiences?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because that opera you mentioned a moment ago, Il Paria, comes from nearly the same time. L'esule di Roma was a little bit earlier. And I think we're just realizing by looking at these operas that the period just before 1830, when Donizetti was in Naples, was one when he really found his voice in some kind of ways through these experimental works. And the really interesting thing about L'esule di Roma is, I think it's the first of these. It's the first of these operas where he really discovered something different from the Rossinian norm that was going on at that time. And it's also a really important opera of Donizetti's because it's the first one that had international dissemination. Within 3 years of it first being performed, it was literally all over the world. It was incredibly popular. So I think, the main reason why that is that the simple answer is that one of the central ways in which he expresses the drama here is through ensembles rather than solo arias. There are plenty of solo arias. There's a solo aria for every major character, but the really critical pieces, the dramatic pieces, are ensembles. And that's a change. He writes letters about it. He's deliberate about this, that he wants to involve, he says, his kind of drama. And, that's, I think, the sort of continuity of our exploration of this particular time is becoming more meaningful as we go on. It's really quite interesting.
Fantastic. Well, it's a project that we're very excited about. It one we're very much looking forward to. We begin recording towards the end of April, and having made a studio recording, we will then move to London's Cadogan Hall on the 11th of May, where there will be a concert presentation of the title. I'm delighted to say that as of right now, fewer than 100 tickets are left. It's had quite an extraordinary impact, and it is almost sold out with over a month to go, which is a really, I think, terrific result for a piece, of course, as with everything with Opera Rara, is hardly known. So if you haven't bought your tickets for that, please do so. And if you would like to hear Roger and some of the artists involved in the project sing some excerpts and talk a little bit more about their involvement, then please join us on the 9th of May for our next Opera Insider, which will be at the World Heartbeat Studios just behind the American Embassy in Vauxhall, where we very much hope to see you. But let's continue with Donizetti for now. I did say a few minutes ago that 23-24 has a particular focus on this great composer, and I want to talk about a project which perhaps in some ways is one of the most ambitious undertakings, I think, that Opera Rara has ever done. And that is what we are calling Donizetti Song, the Donizetti Song Project. Basically, in summary, this is a program which will take place over 3 years to record, if not all, then the vast majority of the 200 songs which Donizetti wrote, some of which are known, but only a handful, and the vast majority of which are completely unknown. So it really is in the spirit of the live operatic archaeology for which Opera Rara is known. There are going to be 8 recital recordings, as I say, taking place between now and 2025. There will also be a series of major concert performances in London with internationally renowned artists. And also alongside that, and this is, I think, an indication of Opera Rara's commitment, not just to working with the best artists in the world, but also to finding the younger generation of emerging talent. There will also be a smaller scale Salon concert series featuring UK artists in the same repertoire. But so again, we are very lucky to have Roger with us, because Roger is very much the creative architect of the Donizetti Song Project, and it is Roger who has undertaken a painstaking and very wide-ranging program of research over many years to bring this collection of material together. So, Roger, tell us about the songs generally, and again, what makes you think they're unique, and why are they a match for Opera Rara?
Yeah, I must say, before that, this is we can partly thank for this project COVID-19, in the sense that there was a sense this was my lockdown project, to embark on this huge corpus of work and try and find it, and it was tremendously time consuming and all consuming in a sense. This is a really remarkable cache of music, actually. I don't think, okay, we all know that Schubert wrote 600 songs, but for Italian composers, Verdi wrote a handful, Bellini wrote a handful, Rossini, maybe 2 handsful. But Donizetti, this is a huge corpus of work which carries on throughout his career, from his very earliest years to his last years. And so, in a sense, this sort of sense that Opera Rara has Donizetti at its core, and then, this sort of central thread of his compositional life in songs running through that is peculiarly apt, for Opera Rara. But it's also the fact that we can get the best singers in the world, we can convince them to come and record these songs. This really is, an addition to the repertory that I'm incredibly proud to be involved in.
Fantastic. Well, it's a project that all of us at Opera Rara are very, very excited about. As I say, it is extraordinarily ambitious and wide-ranging, and we start with phase 1, recording the lighter tenor repertoire alongside the baritone repertoire, and for that we're going to be joined by the fabulous American tenor Lawrence Brownlee, alongside the French-Canadian baritone Etienne Dupuis. And that recording will take place in September of this year, and will be immediately followed by a recital by both of those artists at the Wigmore Hall on the 9th of September. And I should say, just as with the L'esile di Roma, all of this is under the overall curation and guidance of our artistic director, Carlo Rizzi. Unfortunately, Carlo can't be with us this evening because he is in the middle of rehearsals in Tokyo, whereas you can imagine there's quite a time difference which prevents him from being with us. But he does send his very best wishes. And as I say, he will be conducting L'esile di Roma and then returning in a slightly different role as the pianist for that first phase of the Donizetti songs. And we'll be making further announcements about the Donizetti program throughout the year. But I want to move on now and talk about another new initiative which we announced in the autumn of last year, but it's something which I think is very significant for Opera Rara, which is our 2 new artistic ambassadors. The idea of artistic ambassadors basically was to try and find artists, or a couple of artists, who A, had an extremely long and fruitful association with Opera Rara, B, were absolutely at the very, very top level internationally across the opera sector. So singing in all the major houses and absolutely at the peak of their careers. And I don't think that we could have found 2 better people than Ermanella Yaho and Michael Spyres. Both have a long association and a very rich association, a number of different strands in their past relationship with Opera Rara. But what's also incredibly important to us is that both those artists are going to be majorly featured in the Donizetti song project. And so we are delighted that Michael is with us to talk a little bit about what being an artistic ambassador means to him, and also to talk with Roger about his particular involvement in the Donizetti song project. So, Michael, we're delighted to have you with us. Thank you so much for making the time. I think you're in the States right now, or have I got that wrong?
Correct. No, I'm in New York right now. Yes,
Fantastic.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here with you all.
Fantastic. So let me start by asking you about being an artistic ambassador. Given your long association with us, what does that mean to you?
Well, it's quite an honor, and it also is a fantastic reason for me to proliferate the name of Opera Rara, because I owe so much to this organization. And I really tell everyone that without Opera Rara, I wouldn't be here doing what I do, because it was through the recordings and through the foundation and all of the research that you have done in the past that allowed me to find my voice as a baritone, really the person who's in between all of these kind of voices. And the realization that there were so many singers like me from the past, where they might not have been as mainstream, but because of the recordings of Opera Rara, their careers proliferated. And to me, the ability to tell people just I'm here at the Metropolitan Opera in between performances of Bellini's Norma, but it's always great to bring up the name Opera Rara, and for all of them to say, yes, I have the wonderful recording from the 70s or from the 80s or from the 90s, and just the amount of work and the breadth and scope of what you all have done over the history, and to be a small part of it, I could not be more honored.
Well, Michael, I wanted to say to you, it's very interesting with these Donizetti songs that, the normal way of looking, you've got 200 songs there, you break them up into voice types, would be the obvious thing to do. But actually, you'll be very pleased to know that it's virtually impossible to divide them between a baritone and tenor. He just wasn't doing that. I think it was not that. In some ways, it wasn't an unusual voice at that time. It was the voice, that people expected to hear. Yeah. And
exactly.
Donizetti is a perfect example of that in Norma as well. But I wonder, do you think recording songs has different challenges for you in comparison with recording an operatic project? What do you think about that?
Absolutely. And this is why I love this initiative so much, because you're going to be able to hear many, many different aspects of the artist. It does put a lot more pressure on interpretation and the quality of ideas that is put forth as an artist that interprets. Because within an opera, there's so many distractions, as it were, but if you just have piano and the voice, that's what everyone's listening to. They're going to be listening to the subtleties and the beauty, and that's why I find it's a wonderful project to be a part of, because you can see me. Many people know of me on the operatic stage, and so they see this bombastic, larger than life character that I usually portray. I'm usually a king or a demigod or a warrior, but within song, I get to show a more reflective and romantic side that I think that often doesn't get portrayed, in a more intimate side that doesn't get portrayed within opera most of the time.
Yeah, it's interesting as well. The one thing that strikes me about the songs is that very often they're very short. They will last a minute or something, but he captures, you know, you capture a particular character or something, and you have to do that very quickly. You know, in an opera aria, you'll have 4 minutes or soming to do that.
Exactly.
So it's this business of managing to capture a particular atmosphere in a very brief moment. You know,
yeah, that's what I love about song, is because you're basically compacting an entire story and a history within 1 minute, and that's why I love Lieder and song so much, and that's why I'm so excited to discover and record these pieces. And you know, a lot of people, when I had told them about the possibility of this project, and they said, "Oh, Donizetti wrote songs as well," and it's like, just you wait, you'll see just how many songs he wrote.
Yeah, no, it really is extraordinary. And the other thing is, I think within the context of one CD, you'll be able to sort of express something about Donizetti's development as a composer as well.
Precisely.
You know, from, you know, Les Martyrs and all that, you know, there's a very different composer in his French years than the one who was writing Lucia. So there's that.
Absolutely, and that's what I love, is that we're going to be able to show the lineage from you know, his great master Mayer, and to see him break away from that, start to become a different person, and then break away also from the shadow of Rossini, because of the times. And that's why I find it so fascinating, because Donizetti was one of the most multifaceted composers of all time, and people are still just now realizing just how much. And most people, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Roger, he composed 73 operas, is that right?
Well, it depends what you count them as, but it's in that area. Yeah,
and it's astounding. Most people have never heard even a half, or they've only heard of 3 or 4, and they just think of only 3 or 4 operas. But he was quite the prolific composer, and especially within song, people are going to find a new generation of respect for the composer, because he truly was one of a kind.
I think there's one of the things that fascinates me is also, you know, Donizetti died quite young. He died prematurely, and just wonder what he might have become. And actually, some of these really late songs, they're all French, give you a kind of hint of, if he'd managed to live another 10 years, he would have sounded like Gounod, I think, or something.
Exactly,
you know, I agree. Good taste French composer, you know, it would have been that. So there's a fascinating historical journey where we can even learn new things about Donizetti from doing this. I'm so much looking forward to this. Yeah.
Well, Michael,
I have to say thank you so much for letting me be a part of this, and thank you all very much for generously giving to this foundation, because everything that you are doing to support this foundation is truly helping the next generation of singers and artists to proliferate their art and find their own voice, like I've done with mine. And many of the younger singers that I'm working with in master classes here at the Met, or anywhere that I go, I tend to teach them, and the first words out of my mouth is, you remind me of this singer, you know, Dano Refanti, or some singer that has come through and recorded with Opera Rara. This is why it's so important what the foundation is doing, and I couldn't be more pleased to be an artistic part with all of you. Yeah, and someone here says techniques to reach the high D is that should be interesting. I just say, well, hopefully it's not as bad as who was it? There was a famous Milnes would say, hook and push and pay the rent, but hopefully I'm doing it better than that, you know. So
fantastic. Well, Michael, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us, and even your talking of the last kind of couple of minutes, for me at least, completely vindicates our decision to invite you to be an artistic ambassador. You're very, very welcome, and we're also thrilled that you're going to be coming for what's going to be phase 2 of the Donizetti songs, on which you'll hear more later, but that's going to be in May 2024. So please do watch this space, everyone, because it's going to be a very, very exciting event. But for now, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Take care, all, and I'll see you virtually, or if not in person, soon.
We look forward to that very much. So, all right. Moving on, with this extraordinary focus on Donizetti, we decided at Opera Rara that it was really time to find a patron, and so I'm really delighted that following a number of conversations, and also those of you who are London-based will remember a number of I think successful and enjoyable events at the Italian embassy. We're very, very pleased that His Excellency Inigo Lambertini, the ambassador of Italy to the UK, has been appointed as Opera Rara's very first Donizetti patron. And we're delighted about that news. The ambassador, unfortunately, is unable to be with us this evening, but we have a very short message that he would like to share with you all. So here it is.
As an Italian ambassador here in London, my name is Inigo Lambertini. I am honored to be named Opera Rara's Donizetti Patron. It's a special year. It's a year that marks the 225th anniversary of Donizetti's birth. And for me, Donizetti is very special because he was born in Bergamo, but he was linked with the history of my birthplace, Teatro of Opera San Carlo. And actually, I'm an opera lover myself, so I'm passionate about fostering closer cultural ties between Italy and the United Kingdom. Opera Rara works to revive and promote the forgotten operatic genes of Gaetano Donizetti and of many other outstanding Italian authors. It's an important part of that. I look forward to championing their efforts over the next 4 years and sharing the beauty and the richness of Donizetti's music with the large and passionate UK Anglo-Italian community. Viva l'opera!
Great. Well, the ambassador is relatively new to the UK, but he is incredibly enthusiastic, as you can tell, about opera generally, and in particular Opera Rara. So we're thrilled to be working with him and his colleagues at the embassy. So continuing on with our journey through 23-24, I want to share with you just a few details about our Salon series. As I said earlier, this is really our showcase for younger emerging artists who we think at Opera Rara have the makings of very significant careers ahead of them, and with whom we're working in slightly smaller, more intimate concert settings over the course of the next year. So from June 2023, we partner with our friends at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, and also the BBC Cardiff Singer of the World competition, when we'll be presenting a set of lunchtime concerts which will explore undiscovered bel canto treasures, which are part of the Foyle Opera Rara collection. Those of you who've known Opera Rara for a long time will remember that we used to have an extraordinarily rich archive, one of the largest archives of bel canto material in the world, at our studio in Shoreditch. And in 2019, thanks to the generosity of the Foyle Foundation, that archive was moved to Cardiff at the Royal Welsh College, where it is now known as the Foyle Opera Rara Collection. And the concerts that we are programming there, featuring the mezzo-soprano Kezia Binek and the Colombian tenor Julian Henao Gonzalez, are very much designed to animate that collection for the opera-hungry audience who will be in Cardiff throughout the week for the Cardiff Singer of the World competition. The concerts will be presented at the college's wonderful Dora Stautska Hall, and there will also be opportunities for the audience to have curated tours of the Opera Rara collection, and so that they can start to engage firsthand with some of the treasures that are there. We're also going to bring Kezia Binek and Julian Henao Gonzalez to London, where we'll be presenting similar programs at a series of venues. And later in the year, the bass William Thomas, who, by the way, has just been selected to be the English representative for the Cardiff Singer of the World competition. This is a bass who is on the verge of a really, really exciting career. He's a quite extraordinary artist and is still very, very young. He will be singing a Salon recital with us again, and there'll be more information on this and a range of activities which you'll be able to find on the events portion of our website. But very much this Salon series is a growing part of our work, and I think a very important part of our work, as I say, to provide a showcase to young operatic talent of the future. I'm going to talk a little bit now about our releases, because of course we talk a lot about the recordings that we have coming up, but also equally exciting is the journey that happens after a studio recording has been made, after the concert performance has been given, which is the creation of the recording itself and the painstaking work that goes into the booklet, the essays, the libretto, and if you like, the whole presentation of the opera to a global public, whom we reach through our physical recordings, but also increasingly digitally online through the range of major international digital streaming platforms. So the first of these will be Il Proscritto, which I think many of you joined us for in June of last year. This will be released on the 14th of April. It's available for pre-order now on our website and also from all the major record distributors online. And just to give you a reminder for those of you who were with us, but for those of you who weren't with us, here is a little taster video of one of the most beautiful tenor arias in Il Proscritto, which we hope you'll enjoy. So enjoy listening to this for the next minute or so.
La vita è un ben assì, la vita è un ben per me.
But that was the extraordinarily talented Peruvian tenor Ivan Ion Rivas singing Son del tua volte immagine. And this is, as you can see, a video from the studio recording sessions, and it's one of several that we'll be releasing over the coming weeks leading up to the worldwide release of Il Proscrito, as I say, on the 14th of April. Ivan himself will be returning to work with us in another full opera recording project in 2024. This one will involve the return of Sir Mark Elder, our previous music director, working with his orchestra in Manchester, the Halle Orchestra. But it is a tremendously exciting project. Some of you, I think, know about it already. Please do watch this space for further announcements. Our next release will be something completely different, which will be the Offenbach La Princesse de Trebizond, which we recorded in London last September, and that will be released in September of the coming year. So please do watch out for that as well. L'esule di Roma, having made the recording in a month from now, will also come out in the spring of 2024. So one thing that we're really pleased about, and I think is a feature of our work in 23-24, that having emerged from the pandemic relatively unscathed, and certainly with increased and renewed artistic ambition, I'm really pleased that we're now able to return to a cycle of full studio recording releases, because that's the most effective way to communicate our work to a global audience. So we're very, very pleased about that. Okay, so that's a kind of very quick snapshot of everything that we're doing throughout the next year. We now have an opportunity for some questions. So if any of you have some questions, please do unmute yourself and put them to either me or to Roger.
I'm very curious to know how Roger came about the 300 songs by Donizetti. I mean, it was quite a find. How did it happen?
Yeah, it was by writing to a large number of libraries and then trying to get information from others. It was tremendously difficult. I mean, there are major collections in Napoli and in Paris and in Bergamo, as you would expect. But actually I found, I think around 20 completely unknown songs in a monastery in Linz, in Austria. I mean, it's still not clear why they were there, but these are 20 songs, undoubtedly by Donizetti. They didn't know that they had them at all. It was, I had to get a friend of mine to persuade one of the monks there to go in and photograph, you know, all these songs. There are songs in Australian libraries. The thing is, Donizetti was an incredibly convivial character. You know, he loved being with other people. And so it seems like almost every evening when he was having dinner with someone, he'd write out a song for them and give it to them. So it was an enormously intensive and wide-ranging process to find out all these songs. But it was incredibly, I mean, almost every week something else would turn up in my inbox, you know, someone would send me something. So it's been an incredible experience.
Thank you very much for this event. First, congratulations that you got Mr. Spyres as an ambassador. I'm a big fan of him, and I do believe we can create a lot of projects with difficult tenor with him, because he can reach those notes. And secondly, in fact, I like to collect all opera things. In my shell, I have like 300 opera, but all in vinyl. And the thing from Donizetti's opera, for example, Ugo Conte di Parigi, L'Assedio di Gale, those opera was produced by Opera Rara, and I found them in vinyl, but it's made in 1980s, this area. So my question is, the first question is, why can't you produce more vinyl? Because it has a better, fancy taste. I like to collect vinyl instead of CDs. So that's the first thing. If you can do vinyl for the future, or just use the older record and put them into vinyl, I'm definitely buy them. And that's the first thing. Secondly, greeting from Berlin. I live in Berlin, and in Berlin we have 2 concert houses, 3 opera house. The question is, does Opera Rara has this kind of project to not only focus in London or America, but develop them into Germany, like Central Europe? Because in Germany we have the most opera house in one country by proportion. So I think there's a huge audience in Germany who want to discover new opera. We are not all fan of Richard Wagner. We also like Italian operas. So that's the second thing. Can you come to Berlin, for example? Okay. And the third question is what is your plan to reach younger audience, like from 25 to 35, younger 25, I don't know if they are focused on the opera, this kind of taste, but between 25 to 35, how you reach them? So 3 questions.
Okay, well, those are 3 very interesting questions, and one which we think a great deal about at Opera Rara. In answer to your first question about vinyl, yes, you're absolutely right. In fact, the very first Opera Rara releases all came out in vinyl because that was the predominant format of the time. Obviously, that was then overtaken by the launch of CDs. And then more recently, alongside CDs, we now have the growing and very rapidly expanding streaming options. So, it's a constantly shifting market. I think what's interesting about vinyl is, you rightly say, vinyl to some extent had a revival. It's particularly had a revival in the pop market, in the popular music market, where it is very vibrant. I think for us, there are 2 significant challenges to think about with vinyl. The first one is the cost. The cost of manufacturing a vinyl release is extremely high. I don't have the exact figures to hand, but it's something like 5 or 6 times what it takes to print a CD. So obviously, with the economy of our releases, we need to be very careful about that. And the second challenge about vinyl is that, believe it or not, there is a worldwide shortage of actual vinyl material. There is not enough vinyl available for the market that actually wants to release on vinyl. And as I say, popular music genres absolutely are at the front of the queue here. And so what that means is, for example, when we make a recording, we usually want to try and achieve the release of it not more than a year after we actually create the recording and do the concert, because there's an impetus, we gather a momentum, there is interest around what we've done. The fact is, with vinyl, you're looking at a lead-in time sometimes of 2 years or more because of the pressure on the material. So, believe me, it's something we think about. But there are some significant obstacles. Now, your second question around working more internationally, or specifically in Germany, yes, that's something that Opera Rara are very keen on, and we are always looking for potential partner opera companies who share our mission and have a particular commitment to presenting repertoire. And actually, one of our raison d'etre, one of our reasons for being with all of these pieces, is to encourage the wider opera community to look at what we're doing and to perhaps consider whether they would do a fully staged production of Les Îles di Roma, for example. And we have had some success with that. We've built relationships, particularly with the Donizetti Festival in Bergamo, which happens every year, but also we've made some recordings in Valencia, in Spain. So there's a lot more that we want to do in that area. And obviously, Germany is a major market because, as you rightly say, just the concentration of opera houses, you know, particularly in Berlin, where there are 3 of really proven quality. But it's about finding the right product and finding the right collaboration, exactly as we did actually here in the UK. It's a UK-based example when we did the Donizetti world premiere of Laurence Inicia in 2019, and we worked hand in hand with the Opera House on the presentation and the recording and the concert of those pieces. So it's very much something we want to do. And your third question around how do we reach a younger audience? Well, Opera Rara is not alone in saying that that's something that is a challenge for the entire opera sector. As we all know, the opera audience is relatively older, and it is a challenge to attract people when they're younger. One of the things we're doing, particularly in the digital space, is about how we can engage probably a younger audience through streaming. So, for example, that video that you saw of Ion Ivan Rivas singing that wonderful aria from Il Proscrito, you know, that has traction with a younger audience. And one of the things that we've started to do is to really try and promote that material more vigorously in the digital space. There's a lot more that we can and should be doing, and we do have ambitious plans in this area. So it is something that we want to focus on. I'm going to move on because I can see 2 other questions. I think Alan Jackson, you've been waiting quite patiently, and then David, I'll come to you after that. But Alan, please go ahead.
Hi there, it's a question for Roger really. In Les Oulets, there's a mad scene, but unusually it's for Morena, who's the bass baritone in the opera. How do you reckon that mad scene compares with the ones that we probably know better, the sopranos?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. That actually one of my former students, who's now a professor at Berkeley, wrote her dissertation about mad scenes in Donizetti, and she sort of addressed that question. I think that the simple answer to it is that male madness tends to be thought of as of a different quality from female madness, and when men go mad in Italian opera, they tend to get angry and shout a lot. And when women go mad, it's from an excess of feeling, and there's this explosion of melody and music. So the thing you find in Morena in L'Isola di Roma is that his madness is expressed by declamation. He's constantly the melody is interrupted in a sense, and he's sort of shouting, you know, the other characters. So in a sense, it's interesting. There's still a mad scene, but it's at the opposite end of the musical spectrum from Lucia di Lammermoor. It's a very interesting idea of how opera can be, you know, the way people sing is gendered in a kind of very noticeable way when it comes to that. Yeah, it's a good question.
Thank you. Thank you. We're getting a bit past our allotted time, but I think we've got time for just 2 more questions. So, David, why don't you go next?
Great, thank you. So first of all, thank you for this event, and second of all, thank you for letting me say something. I don't really have so much of a question as I do a thank you. I'm sure that you receive messages of gratitude on a regular basis, but I also am sure that it must be very, very challenging, particularly in the current economic climate after COVID, since it's opera and classical music, and even within opera, it's a very niche. But I just hope that maybe I can reassure you that your work is profoundly impactful. I came to opera when I was about 21 years old, and that goes back now about 30 years. And I remember it took me about 3 years after I found out about the existence of the Maria Padilla recording to find it on LP finally. It was so scarce and it wasn't time for CDs yet at that time. I'm in the US. But also Roger's many writings in publications. I sought everything out in the library, and it was a different time then than it is now, but Opera Rara has been a critical motivator and inspiration for learning. I have all of your recordings, and I have in person seen it probably getting close to 500 different opera titles in performance. And I'm not one to go to Butterfly 17 times. I'm much more likely to seek out the unusual things. And I feel very much in simpatico with your mission and always have. So it's a great opportunity for me to say thank you.
Fantastic, David. It's really heartwarming, I think, for us as a team to hear your very kind words, and we're very grateful to them. Okay, well, look, it's getting on to 7 o'clock now, so we ought to bring things to a close. And usually at this point, I would hand over to our chairman, Charles Alexander, who would make some remarks, but Charles unfortunately is not able to be with us this evening. So it really falls to me to really say what is extremely obvious to us at Opera Rara, which is that none of this work would be possible without your help. And when I say you, there are so many people on this call right now who are very significant and very valued and extremely loyal contributors to our work. As many of you know, the vast majority of our income comes from fundraising. And that is, I think, a vindication of the extraordinary commitment that many of you regularly make to our journey of live operatic archaeology. What's clear is that journey would be impossible without your help. So all of us at Opera Rara send all of you a huge vote of thanks for your help, not just financial, but also your advocacy for talking about us and for spreading the word globally, not just in the UK, but throughout Europe and the States, because that's incredibly valuable for our actually very still small organization to continue to really punch above its weight. So a huge thank you to you, and we very much look forward to seeing you personally on the very exciting journey that we have ahead, not just for the next year, but also for many, many years ahead. And thank you very much for being with us this evening. And I hope we've given you just a little taster of some of the extraordinarily unique things that we have to offer you over the next 12 months. So for now, thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you in person very soon.